Many, many centuries ago, in a land of hills, deserts, and ancient olive trees, there lived a noble prophet and king named Dawood A.S., or David, as some know him. Dawood A.S. was beloved by his people. He was wise, brave, and deeply devoted to his Lord. He ruled with justice, spoke with kindness, and sang praises to Allah in the sweetest of voices. Now, like every loving father, Dawood A.S. was blessed with children. But there was one child in particular, a boy unlike the others. His name was Suleiman A.S. From the time he was small, there was something different about him. As a child, Suleiman wasn't interested in what most children did. While others played games or chased animals, he would quietly sit under the trees, watching the birds, listening to the wind, and asking his father thoughtful questions. "Father, why does the sun always rise from that side? Why do animals follow certain leaders? If a king is powerful, can he be unfair?" Such questions made Dawood A.S. smile. He saw in Suleiman not just the heart of a boy, but the spark of a leader. One day, an old wise man in their land approached Dawood A.S. and said, "O Dawood, among your sons, there is one chosen by Allah. He will inherit not just your throne, but a kingdom greater than any the world has known." And though Dawood A.S. loved all his children, he knew in his heart it was Suleiman. As Suleiman A.S. grew, so did his wisdom. Even as a teenager, people would come to him with their disputes, seeking his calm, thoughtful judgment. There's a famous story, you know. Two men once came to Dawood A.S., arguing over a field. "His sheep ate my crops at night," one man complained. The other replied, "It wasn't my fault. I didn't know they would wander." Dawood A.S. thought for a moment and decided the man with the sheep should give them to the farmer to make up for the loss. But Suleiman A.S., listening nearby, politely spoke up. "Father, may I suggest something?" Dawood A.S. smiled. "Of course, my son." Suleiman A.S. explained, "Let the farmer keep the sheep temporarily to benefit from their milk and wool. Meanwhile, the owner of the sheep will replant and care for the field until it returns to its original state. Then, they can exchange them back." It was fair. It was balanced. It considered both men's losses and future. And Dawood A.S., wise and humble, accepted his young son's judgment. That day, everyone saw the brilliance of Suleiman A.S. You see, my friend, some people are born with greatness written in their fate. But it's not the kind of greatness you shout about or show off. It's a quiet, noble strength, a way of seeing the world not just as it is, but as it could be, of judging with both justice and mercy, of leading with both firmness and kindness. And Suleiman A.S. was such a soul. It is said that the angels themselves knew his name long before he was grown. A man chosen not just to rule over humans, but to command armies of creatures both seen and unseen. Yet for all his wisdom and future power, Suleiman A.S. was gentle. He loved animals. He treated the poor with respect. He never let arrogance touch his heart. He would often be seen helping his father build homes for widows, or feeding travelers, or freeing trapped birds from nets. That, my dear listener, is the mark of a true leader, kindness in small moments. After the story of the farmers and the sheep, news of Suleiman's A.S. wisdom spread across the land. People began to whisper in admiration, "Have you heard the prince's judgment?" Even at this age, his wisdom shines brighter than seasoned men. But Suleiman A.S. never let it reach his heart. He remained humble, always giving credit to Allah. His father, Dawood A.S., continued to teach him, not just about kingship or war, but about compassion, justice, and faith. Dawood A.S. would take him on walks through the villages, visiting the poor and the sick. "A king," he'd tell his son, "is nothing without the prayers of the oppressed." And Suleiman A.S. listened. Every word, every lesson, planted in his heart like seeds in fertile soil. Suleiman A.S. had a gentle spirit. While other princes rode horses and hunted for sport, Suleiman would spend his time observing animals. He noticed how ants carried food together, how birds warned each other of danger, how even the smallest creatures served a purpose in the world. He would leave crumbs for the birds and rescue tiny insects from water wells. Villagers would smile and say, "That boy has a heart as soft as silk." And they were right. Allah was preparing him for something few could imagine, to one day command not just people, but animals and creatures unseen by human eyes. Meanwhile, Dawood's kingdom continued to grow. New villages sprang up. Trade routes stretched farther. Peace settled over the land like a warm, protective blanket. And Sulayman watched his father rule with fairness. When disputes arose between merchants, Dawood would listen carefully, never rushing judgment. A king's duty, he told Sulayman, is not to please people, but to please Allah. Justice is the foundation of every lasting kingdom. Sulayman took those words to heart. By the time he was a young man, Sulayman's reputation for wisdom was unmatched. Elders twice his age sought his advice. Merchants asked him to settle disputes. Travelers carried stories of his fair decisions to faraway lands. But Sulayman always remained modest. "It is not I who judge wisely," he would say, "but Allah, who places wisdom where he wills." That humility was what made people love him even more. He was a prince without arrogance, a scholar without pride, a leader before even sitting on a throne. One evening, Dawood gathered Sulayman and his other sons. He spoke of power, how it could be a blessing or a curse. "A crown," Dawood said, lifting his simple headpiece, "is heavier than it looks. It tempts the weak and tests the strong." He told them stories of kings who became tyrants, of rulers who forgot the poor, of leaders who chased gold instead of truth. And he reminded them, only the one who bows before Allah can stand tall before men. Sulayman listened, feeling those words carve themselves into his soul. In those days, Sulayman often wandered the hills at night. He would sit beneath the stars, marveling at their beauty. He watched as owls hooted, as foxes darted between bushes, as the night wind whispered through the trees. It was there, in those quiet moments, that he felt closest to his Lord. Some nights, it is said, he would pray so long the moon would rise and set, and he wouldn't notice. It was clear, this young prince was not like others, and the angels above watched, knowing that soon he would be entrusted with a kingdom that would stretch across lands, seas, and skies. Long before Sulayman ruled, it was his father Dawood who sat upon the throne. Dawood wasn't an ordinary king. He was a prophet chosen by Allah, known for his wisdom, courage, and powerful voice. His kingdom stretched over hills, valleys, and ancient cities, filled with merchants, farmers, travelers, and soldiers. But what made his rule special wasn't the gold in his treasury or the number of his armies. It was his justice. He ruled fairly, listened patiently, and always sought Allah's guidance before making a decision. People would often say, "We have a king who listens to our hearts, not just our words." And in those days, the land was peaceful. One of the most beautiful gifts Allah gave Dawood was his voice. It said that when Dawood recited the Zabur, the holy book sent to him, the birds in the sky would pause mid-flight to listen. Rivers would slow, winds would quiet, and even wild animals would draw near, enchanted by his words. At dawn and dusk, people would gather near his palace, just to hear his voice rising in praise of Allah. "O mountains, echo with me. O birds, sing along," he would call. And the mountains would repeat his words, while birds soared in circles above. Little Sulayman, would often sit nearby, eyes wide with wonder, listening to his father's voice blending with nature. It was in those moments he learned that true power comes from remembering your Creator. Dawood was famous for his fair judgments. He would hold court daily, and anyone, rich or poor, could bring their case before him. Whether it was a merchant cheated in trade, a traveler robbed on the road, or a farmer whose land was damaged, Dawood listened to each one. He never favored the powerful over the weak. and he never made a decision without first pausing in silent prayer. One day, two women came to him with a difficult case. Each claimed a baby boy as her own. Without anger or hurry, Dawood listened to both, then made his ruling wisely. Moments like these shaped Sulayman, teaching him the importance of patience, fairness, and listening with both ears and heart. But Dawood wasn't only a wise ruler. He was also a brave warrior. He led his armies in person, defending his people when enemies attacked. And he never allowed pride to cloud his heart. When victories came, he thanked Allah. When losses happened, he asked for forgiveness. Sulayman would watch his father ride out at dawn, armor shining in the light, and return at dusk dusty and tired, yet always smiling and kind. It was in these lessons that Sulayman learned a leader must be both brave and merciful. Though Dawood's kingdom grew rich with trade, caravans brought spices, silk, and gold. He never built a palace of gold or filled his halls with jewels. He preferred simple meals, modest clothes, and quiet prayer. He taught Sulayman that wealth is a test, not a treasure. Better a full heart than a full treasury, he would say. And Sulayman kept those words close. At night, Dawood would sit with his sons, telling them stories of prophets before them, of Nuh and his great ark, of Ibrahim and the test of faith. He spoke of the angels, the day of judgment, and the endless mercy of Allah. Sulayman listened, storing every word like precious pearls in his mind. And slowly, people began to notice this young prince was no ordinary boy. As Sulayman grew older, his wisdom seemed to bloom like a tree planted by calm waters. People around him noticed it. His words carried weight. His advice calmed angry hearts. And when disagreements happened in the market, people would say, "Let's ask Sulayman. His judgment is always fair." Even his father, the great Dawood began trusting him with important matters. But one day, a situation arose that would show just how special Sulayman truly was. Two men arrived at the court of Dawood, faces tense, voices raised. One was a farmer, his hands rough and his face sun-darkened. The other was a wealthy shepherd, dressed in fine wool. The farmer spoke first. "O king, his sheep broke into my field during the night and ate all my crops. My family depends on that field. Now we have nothing." The shepherd lowered his head. "I tried to stop them, but they escaped. I didn't mean for it to happen." Dawood thought carefully. After a pause, he ruled that the shepherd must give his entire flock to the farmer as payment for the lost crops. It seemed fair. The crops were gone, and the farmer needed a way to survive. But before the men left, Sulayman still a young man, politely stepped forward. "Father," he said gently, "may I offer a different solution?" Dawood smiled. "Of course, my son. Speak." Sulayman addressed both men calmly. "The farmer will keep the shepherd's flock for now. He can benefit from their milk, their wool, and their labor while he regrows his crops." The farmer's face lit up, and the shepherd, Sulayman continued, will tend to the farmer's field. He will plant new crops and care for them until the land is as it was before. The men nodded, considering the idea. When the field has fully recovered, Sulayman finished, they will exchange again. The shepherd will take back his flock, and the farmer will regain his crops. It was brilliant, balanced, merciful, and it protected both men from lasting harm. Dawood smiled proudly. "Your judgment is wiser than mine today, my son. Allah has gifted you with great wisdom." Word of Sulayman's wisdom spread like the scent of rain on dry earth. Merchants told the tale in busy marketplaces. Travelers carried it to distant lands. And before long, people spoke his name with respect. "There is a prince," they would say, "whose judgments are fairer than silver scales." But Sulayman remained humble. He always said, "It is not my wisdom, but the wisdom of my Lord. I am but a servant." Not long after, one night while the stars blinked quietly above the hills, Sulayman had a dream. In it, he stood before a vast kingdom. Mountains bowed before him. Winds whispered his name. Birds circled above, and unseen creatures waited for his command. He woke with a heart full of awe. He told no one of this vision, but deep inside, he knew it was a sign, a promise, a glimpse of what was to come. From that day, Dawood A.S. entrusted Suleiman A.S. with even greater responsibilities. He would accompany his father to court. He led delegations, settled disputes, advised on trade routes and village affairs. And every decision Suleiman A.S. made seemed to bring fairness, peace, and prosperity. His words were never harsh, his tone always kind, but his wisdom struck like an arrow to the heart. The people began to say, when Suleiman judges, even the wind stops to listen. As Suleiman A.S. grew in wisdom and responsibility, Allah granted him a remarkable gift. Not just the ability to judge fairly or lead wisely, but the power to understand the language of animals. Imagine that for a moment. Being able to hear what the birds sing, to know the worries of ants, or to understand the chatter of the creatures around you. It's a gift almost unimaginable today, but it was very real for Suleiman A.S. One of the most famous stories about Suleiman A.S. involves the ants. It's said that as Suleiman's great army marched through a valley, an ant saw them coming and warned its colony. "Oh ants, hurry into your homes. The soldiers of Suleiman are approaching, and they might crush us all." The ants listened quickly and scurried safely inside their tiny tunnels. When Suleiman A.S. heard this warning, he smiled and praised Allah for this gift. He stopped his army for a moment to avoid harming the little creatures. Not only ants, but birds too were part of Suleiman's kingdom. He could understand their songs, their warnings, and their news. One day, a hoopoe bird brought Suleiman A.S. an important message from faraway land. The bird told him about a queen who ruled a great kingdom, rich, wise, but not yet a believer. This news set in motion one of the most famous stories in the life of Suleiman A.S. about the Queen of Sheba. This gift to speak with animals showed the balance Allah created in the world. Humans, animals, jinn, and all creatures were connected in a great web of life. Suleiman A.S. was given the responsibility to protect and lead all of them, to rule not only over people, but over nature itself. Imagine the patience it took to listen to the whispers of the smallest creatures and the kindness to respect their lives. There is a beautiful lesson in this story for us. No matter how powerful or wise we become, we should never forget the small, silent lives around us. Kindness to animals and respect for nature is part of the faith taught by all prophets. Suleiman's A.S. ability to hear animals reminds us that all creation praises the Creator in its own way. As Suleiman A.S. grew into his role as leader and prophet, Allah granted him an extraordinary power, the ability to control the wind. Imagine a breeze that answers your call, a wind that carries messages, moves armies, and travels vast distances in moments. For Suleiman A.S., the wind became more than just air flowing by. It was a loyal servant, swift and strong. It is said that when Suleiman A.S. needed to travel quickly across his vast kingdom, the wind would carry him like a ship sailing the skies. With just a command, the wind would speed him over mountains, deserts, and seas. His armies, too, could be moved swiftly, surprising enemies and protecting his people. This power made his kingdom one of the fastest and most connected of all time. This gift was a reminder that true power does not come from weapons or wealth, but from Allah alone. Suleiman A.S. used this power wisely, never for pride or harm, but to maintain justice and peace. He understood that controlling the forces of nature was a sacred trust, not a tool for selfish gain. With great power comes great responsibility. Suleiman A.S. showed us that leadership means caring for the world, not dominating it. The wind obeyed him, yes, but only because Allah allowed it. It was a lesson in humility and gratitude. Though we may not command the wind, we can learn from Suleiman's example. We can listen carefully to the world around us, respect nature, and use our gifts to serve others. True strength lies in kindness, wisdom, and faith. In the world created by Allah, besides humans and animals, there exist beings called jinn. They are made from smokeless fire, invisible to the human eye, but very real. Jinn have free will, like humans, and can choose to do good or evil. Some jinn follow Allah's guidance, while others do not. One of the extraordinary gifts given to Sulayman, A.S., was the ability to command the jinn. These invisible beings became helpers in building his great kingdom. They worked tirelessly, moving heavy stones, constructing palaces, digging canals, and more. Imagine armies of jinn working quietly behind the scenes, shaping the land and the cities. With the help of the jinn, Sulayman's kingdom grew vast and prosperous. Trade routes flourished, gardens blossomed, cities rose from the desert sands. All this was possible because of the cooperation between Sulayman, A.S., humans, and the jinn. Though powerful, Sulayman, A.S., treated the jinn with justice and kindness. He gave them fair work and rested their rights. He never abused his power over them. This respect kept the peace in his kingdom, even among beings unseen by most people. The story reminds us that true leadership is about respect and responsibility. Power is not for oppression, but for serving others. Sulayman, A.S., shows us how faith and fairness can bring harmony between very different creatures. With the help of his loyal jinn and the power granted by Allah, Sulayman, A.S., built a kingdom unlike any other. Gardens blossomed where once there was desert. Fountains flowed with fresh, cool water. Cities grew tall and strong, filled with markets, scholars, and travelers. People lived in peace and prosperity. Justice was the foundation of every town, and kindness was the law of the land. Sulayman's, A.S., palaces were grand but not vain, built with care and skill. They stood as a symbol of faith and humility. The walls were adorned with beautiful calligraphy, praising Allah. The floors were cool underfoot, made from polished stone and marble. Despite the grandeur, Sulayman, A.S., never let wealth change his heart. He remained humble and generous to all. Justice was at the heart of Sulayman's kingdom. No matter who you were, rich or poor, traveler or villager, you could seek fairness. Courts were held daily, and Sulayman himself would listen to the hardest cases. His famous wisdom was known far and wide. The kingdom flourished because it was built on faith. People prayed together, helped each other, and lived with gratitude. Sulayman, as taught that true wealth comes not from gold or land, but from the peace in one's heart. The Queen of Sheba ruled a wealthy land far to the south of Sulayman's, A.S., kingdom. Her land was known for rich spices, fragrant incense, and beautiful treasures. She was wise and powerful, but also curious, and she had heard stories about the great wisdom and power of Sulayman, A.S. One day, the hoopoe bird flew to Sulayman, A.S., with news of the queen and her kingdom. The bird told Sulayman about her people and their wealth, but also about her doubts and questions about faith. Sulayman, A.S., knew it was time to invite her to visit and learn the truth. The queen set out with her caravan, traveling across deserts and mountains. Her journey was long and filled with wonder. Camels paced steadily, tents fluttered in the wind, and stories were shared by the fires at night. When she arrived, the queen was amazed by the beauty and peace of Sulayman's kingdom. She saw gardens, fountains, and people living happily in harmony. And then she met Sulayman himself, wise, humble, and full of kindness. Their conversation was deep and thoughtful. Sulayman, A.S., spoke about faith, justice, and the power of Allah's mercy. The queen listened carefully, her heart opening to new understanding. After spending time in Sulayman's kingdom, the Queen of Sheba was deeply impressed. She admired the justice, the peace, and the harmony she saw around her. But she was also curious about Sulayman's wisdom, how a man could rule so wisely and kindly. She asked many questions, eager to understand the source of his strength. Sulayman, A.S., shared with her the importance of faith in Allah. He spoke about the beauty of justice, mercy, and humility. The queen listened carefully, feeling her heart open. She realized that true power comes not from riches or armies, but from belief in righteousness. Slowly, the Queen of Sheba's heart changed. She saw that the path Sulayman A.S. followed was one of truth and light. Her doubts faded, replaced by hope and faith. She promised to share these teachings with her own people. This meeting created a strong bond between the two leaders. They became allies in spreading peace, justice, and faith. Their friendship symbolized the power of understanding and respect between different peoples. One of the greatest wonders of Sulayman's A.S. reign was the building of a magnificent temple. Not just any temple, but a place of peace, learning, and worship, open to all who sought knowledge and truth. This temple was built with the help of jinn, men, and animals alike, working together in harmony. The temple's walls were decorated with delicate carvings of nature and scripture. Its floors shone like polished marble, reflecting the sunlight in a soft, golden glow. Every stone was placed with care, every detail planned with wisdom. Sulayman A.S. personally oversaw the project, ensuring it was a symbol of faith and humility, not pride. The temple became a place where people came to seek justice and wisdom. Disputes were settled fairly. Questions about faith were answered kindly. The poor and the rich alike found comfort within its walls. It was a true sanctuary, shining like a beacon in the kingdom. More than a building, the temple represented unity. It was a place where different peoples and creatures lived in peace. Sulayman's A.S. kingdom was a shining example of how faith can bring harmony to the world. Even the wisest and most just leaders face challenges. Sulayman A.S. was no exception. His kingdom, though prosperous and peaceful, faced difficulties, threats from enemies, disputes among his people, and tests of his faith. When troubles came, Sulayman A.S. responded with patience and calm. He sought guidance from Allah through prayer and reflection. His decisions were thoughtful, never rushed. At times, enemies tried to shake the kingdom's faith, but Sulayman A.S. stood firm, reminding his people to trust in Allah's plan. He showed that true strength comes from faith, even in the hardest moments. Sulayman A.S. was also known for his mercy. He forgave those who repented and always sought to heal rather than punish. His kindness was a light in times of darkness. Sulayman A.S. is remembered not just as a great king, but as a servant of Allah who ruled with justice, wisdom, and mercy. His story has been told for centuries, a beacon of hope and faith for millions. The kingdoms and cities he built became centers of faith and learning. People from all around sought wisdom and justice in his land. His example teaches us that true leadership is humble service. Power without mercy is empty. Sulayman's A.S. life shows how faith can guide even the greatest of challenges. He ruled not for glory, but to serve. Sulayman A.S. knew that true wisdom isn't just for one lifetime. He took great care to teach his children and advisors about justice, mercy, and faith. His lessons were stories, prayers, and simple words that stayed in the heart. His teachings became the foundation for future leaders. Many kings and scholars look back to Sulayman's example for guidance. The kingdom remained a place where different peoples and creatures lived in harmony. His legacy was not just in buildings or wealth, but in the hearts of his people. Even today, the story of Sulayman A.S. inspires people around the world. His life reminds us that wisdom, kindness, and faith are gifts we can share. Sulayman A.S. showed us that wisdom comes from faith, patience, and kindness. He ruled justly, led humbly, and always remembered his place as a servant of Allah. Let us pray for the strength to follow his example, to be wise in our actions, merciful in our dealings, and faithful in our hearts. As you close your eyes tonight, remember that every story carries a lesson. May the story of Sulayman as fill your dreams with peace and light. Thank you for joining me on this journey. Good night, and may Allah bless you.